This is the research for Luke 19:41 to 44. This brief prediction could plausibly have been made by any religious leader in Jerusalem. However, placing it on the lips of Yeshua gives the statement considerably greater significance within the narrative. Jewish resistance to Roman rule was a persistent feature of the period, and Passover was often a time of heightened tension and unrest in Jerusalem. Yeshua would have been aware of the ongoing conflict between the Jewish population and the Roman authorities and may have anticipated that Rome would eventually take decisive action to suppress such resistance permanently. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the temple during the First Jewish Revolt. Following the Second Jewish Revolt, which ended in 135 CE, Jerusalem was largely devastated, and Jews were prohibited from entering the city. Questioning the passage 1. What does it mean that Yeshua wept for the city? Verse 41. In the Jewish prophetic tradition, Jesus was steeped in. Weeping over a city was a recognized genre. The lament, most famously modeled by Jeremiah, the weeping prophet who wept over Jerusalem's coming destruction. Jeremiah 9:1, Lamentations. By Jesus' day, this association would have been unmistakable to Jewish hearers. A figure weeping over Jerusalem while predicting its fall was deliberately invoking Jeremiah's prophetic posture before the Babylonian destruction of the first temple. Luke is drawing a typological line. Jesus as a prophet like Jeremiah, foretelling a second destruction, fulfilled in 70 CE, as we discussed. 2. What does it mean? They will destroy you and your children within you. Verse 44. This is an idiom meaning total annihilation of the people. 3. What does the phrase, because you knew not the time of their visitation, mean? Verse 44. The inhabitants of Jerusalem did not know when the Romans would invade the city, destroy the temple, and ultimately devastate Jerusalem itself. The Zealots and other Jewish resistance groups likely did not anticipate the scale of the Roman response or the extent of the destruction that would follow. From their perspective, Jerusalem remained an economically valuable city within the empire. As long as taxes continued to be collected, there may have seemed little reason for Rome to destroy such a productive asset. They likely underestimated Rome's willingness to incur the costs of war and occupation to eliminate persistent rebellion. Ultimately, the Roman campaigns against Judea served not only to suppress local resistance, but also to demonstrate the consequences of revolt, sending a powerful message to the rest of the empire about the price of challenging Roman authority. Other observations. A history lesson on Jerusalem from 10 BCE to its destruction in 70 CE, 10 BCE to 4 BCE, Herod the Great's final years. Herod ruled Jerusalem as a Roman client king under Augustus. Around 10/9 BCE, the renovated Second Temple, begun approximately 20 BCE, was largely completed in its main structure, though construction continued for decades. This is the temple referenced in the Gospels. Herod died in 4 BCE, and his kingdom was divided among his sons, the Tetrarchy, per Augustus's approval. This is the transition point relevant to the nativity narratives in Matthew. 4 BCE to 6 CE, Herod Archelaus. Herod's son Archelaus ruled Judea, including Jerusalem, as ethnarch, but his brutal and incompetent governance provoked constant unrest. Matthew 2:22 references Joseph avoiding Judea because Archelaus was reigning there. Jewish and Samaritan delegations petitioned Rome to remove him. 6 CE, direct Roman rule begins. Augustus deposed Archelaus and converted Judea into a Roman province governed directly by a prefect, later called procurator, answerable to the Roman governor of Syria. This is the true beginning of direct Roman administration over Jerusalem. The first census under Quirinius, governor of Syria, Luke 2:2, is tied to this administrative transition, sparking the zealot revolt of Judas of Galilee, mentioned in Acts 5:37. 6 to 41 CE, prefects and the ministry of Jesus. A series of Roman prefects governed Judea, residing mainly at Caesarea Maritima, but coming to Jerusalem for festivals, bringing troops due to crowd volatility. Coponius, 6 to 9 CE, Valerius Gratus, 15 to 26 CE, Pontius Pilate, 26 to 36 CE, prefect during Jesus' ministry, trial, and crucifixion. Also, the figure before whom the triumphal entry, Luke 19:28 to 40, would have been politically provocative, given Pilate's history of clashing with Jewish crowds over Roman standards and treasury funds. Marcellus and Marullus, 36 to 41 CE. Throughout this period, the high priesthood, a Roman-controlled appointment, handled day-to-day Jewish civil and religious administration in Jerusalem, while Rome retained ultimate authority, the backdrop for the Sanhedrin's limited authority in the Passion narratives. 41 to 44 CE, brief return to client kingship. Herod Agrippa I, grandson of Herod the Great, was granted the full former Herodian territory, including Judea and Jerusalem, by Emperor Claudius, a rare interlude of local Jewish kingship. Agrippa executed James, son of Zebedee, and imprisoned Peter, Acts 12. He died suddenly in 44 CE, 44 to 66 CE, returned to direct procuratorial rule. Judea reverted to direct Roman governance under procurators with escalating tension. Cuspius Fatus, Tiberius Julius Alexander, Ventidius Cumanus, Antonius Felix, Porcius Festus, Lucius Albinus, Gessius Florus corruption, heavy taxation, insensitivity to Jewish religious practice, and rising nationalist/messianic movements, zealots, Sicarii, steadily eroded stability. Paul's trials before Felix and Festus, Acts 24 to 26, occur in this window. 66 CE, the Great Jewish Revolt begins. Gessius Florus's provocations, seizing temple funds, permitting troops to plunder Jerusalem, ignited open rebellion. Jewish rebels overran the Roman garrison in Jerusalem. The revolt spread across Judea and Galilee. Plus 66 to 70 CE, the Roman-Jewish War. Nero dispatched General Vespasian with his son Titus to suppress the revolt. Vespasian systematically retook Galilee and the countryside, 67 to 68 CE. Following Nero's death and the year of 4 emperors, 69 CE, Vespasian became emperor and handed command to Titus, who besieged Jerusalem. 70 CE, the destruction of Jerusalem. After a brutal months-long siege, famine, internal factional fighting among Jewish defenders, and Roman assault, Titus's forces breached Jerusalem's walls and destroyed the Second Temple in August 70 CE, an event Jesus is depicted foretelling in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew 24, Luke 19:41 to 44, directly following the triumphal entry passage. The city was razed and the war effectively ended, aside from the Masada holdout, which fell in 73/74 CE. This arc, Herod's temple, Roman prefects, Pilate's rule, and the eventual destruction Jesus predicted, gives strong historical scaffolding for both your Matthew's Gospel exegesis and the Luke 19:28 to 40 devotional, especially since Luke pairs the triumphal entry directly with Jesus weeping over Jerusalem's coming destruction. Why did the author include this narrative? Much depends on the date assigned to the composition of the gospel. Scholarly estimates often place its writing between 60 and 70 CE. If the gospel was composed after 70 CE, then the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple had already occurred. In that case, this brief prediction may reflect a retrospective editorial addition rather than a genuine forecast of future events. Such a possibility has led some scholars to argue that the passage was shaped by knowledge of the catastrophe that befell Jerusalem. From this perspective, the author may have been addressing the concerns of an emerging Christian community living under Roman rule. The narrative could be interpreted as a cautionary message against participation in anti-Roman revolts, presenting the destruction of Jerusalem as a warning of the devastating consequences of resistance to imperial authority. While this interpretation remains speculative, it highlights the extent to which the dating of the gospel influences historical and theological readings of the passage. Why was the narrative written the way it was? This is a short narrative that either is a prophetic statement or an answer to why the temple was destroyed. Either way, it is a warning to the community that standing opposed to Roman rule is a bad idea. Hermeneutics for us today. Another way to interpret this passage is as a lesson in wisdom, discernment, and realistic self-assessment. Jesus may be suggesting that before confronting a stronger opponent, one must carefully consider both the costs and the likelihood of success. Zeal alone is not a strategy. The Zealots were united in their desire to expel Rome from Judea, but passion and determination could not overcome the overwhelming military and economic power of the empire. Their vision did not adequately account for Rome's strength or the devastating consequences of failure. Rather than provoking repeated confrontations and riots, especially during Passover when tensions were highest, a more prudent course may have been to seek alternative means of preserving Jewish identity, faith, and community. The tragedy of Jerusalem serves as a reminder that conviction must be accompanied by wisdom. This lesson has potential relevance for the contemporary church. For many decades, mainline denominations relied on patterns of ministry that had proven successful in earlier generations. Yet the social and cultural landscape has changed dramatically. In many regions, church attendance has declined, particularly among younger generations, while independent and non-denominational congregations have often been more successful in attracting and retaining members. The challenge facing the church today is similar to the challenge faced by the leaders of Jerusalem in the first century: how to respond to a changing environment without losing one's core identity. The answer is not to abandon the gospel, but to reconsider how it is communicated and lived out. Churches must be willing to meet people where they are, addressing their questions, struggles, and hopes in ways that are meaningful to contemporary life. If they fail to adapt, they risk becoming increasingly disconnected from the communities they seek to serve. The destruction of the temple stands as a powerful historical symbol of what can happen when institutions are unable to respond effectively to changing realities. Conversely, it also reminds us that renewal is possible when faith communities embrace both tradition and transformation. The future of the church may depend not on preserving old methods, but on faithfully reimagining how timeless truths can be proclaimed to a new generation.